What's the point of inviting her? She doesn't even speak English. It's like talking to a wall. Laughter erupted from the head table, where two American CEOs raised their glasses in a toast. At the far end, Kenna Sato, a logistics millionaire from Tokyo, sat in elegant silence. Small in stature and wearing a modern black kimono-style dress, the Japanese woman in her 50s kept her eyes downcast, showing no reaction. She was surrounded by a suffocating silence, a stillness that was about to be shattered. Quietly pouring water, unnoticed by anyone, was the waitress, 26-year-old Imani Jones. In a few minutes, this oppressive silence would transform the entire room when a Japanese voice emerged from the most unexpected place. The private dining room in the Manhattan luxury hotel epitomized corporate power. A long table was draped in white linen, its surface adorned with crystal glasses catching the candlelight and bottles of Bordeaux worth more than most people's monthly salary. This intimate dinner was designed to finalize a $500 million business deal. Kenna Sato sat at the far end of the table like an island of calm in a sea of aggressive American business culture. At 55, she had built a logistics empire that spanned 3 continents, but her small stature and preference for traditional Japanese business etiquette made her appear almost fragile among the loud, confident Americans. She wore a modern interpretation of a kimono in midnight black, her silver hair arranged in an elegant chignon. Her English was limited, requiring her to work through a translator who sat nervously beside her, clearly intimidated by the high-stakes environment. Arthur Finch dominated the conversation from the head of the table. At 54, he commanded a hedge fund worth billions and had the arrogance that came with never being told no. His voice carried the assumption that everyone present existed for his entertainment. This whole process would move faster if everyone spoke the same language, he announced, cutting into his steak with theatrical precision. His business partner, Monica Croft, laughed appreciatively. At 45, she had clawed her way to the top of the investment world and enjoyed displaying her superiority over anyone she considered beneath her station. Maybe she thinks silence is a negotiation strategy, Monica added with a smirk, or maybe she just has nothing valuable to contribute. The translator shifted uncomfortably, clearly choosing to soften these comments rather than translate their full contempt. Kenna maintained her composed expression, but those watching closely might have noticed the slight tightening around her eyes. Imani Jones moved through the room like a shadow, refilling water glasses and wine with practiced invisibility. At 26, she had perfected the art of service industry survival: be present when needed, invisible when not. Her dark hair was coiled into a perfect bun, framing a face of quiet observation, and her black uniform was immaculate. The hotel manager, Julian, had pulled her aside before service began with his usual condescending instructions. These are VIP clients. Stay invisible. They don't want to see your face in their photos or remember that you exist. Pour, clear, disappear. Imani nodded silently, as she always did, but something in the manager's tone made her jaw clench slightly. As she moved around the table, she couldn't help but notice the dynamic developing. The 2 American executives spoke about Kenna as if she weren't present, their voices growing louder and more dismissive with each glass of wine. When Imani leaned forward to pour Monica's wine, she overheard a whispered comment that made her blood run cold. "We can finalize everything tonight. She'll sign whatever we put in front of her. She won't even understand what she's agreeing to." Monica's laugh was low and predatory. "Just keep smiling and nodding, and we'll walk away with controlling interest." Imani's hand trembled slightly as she set down the wine bottle. For a moment, her eyes met Kenna's across the table. In that brief connection, she saw not confusion or weakness, but a sharp intelligence that was being systematically ignored and underestimated. The humiliation escalated as the evening progressed. Arthur seemed to view Kenna's quiet dignity as a personal challenge. "You know what the problem is with international business," he announced, tapping his knife against his wine glass. "Too much accommodation for people who haven't bothered to learn how the modern world works. English is the language of global commerce. If you don't speak it fluently, you don't belong at tables like this." The translator, a middle-aged Japanese-American man named Mr. Ishikawa, was visibly sweating, his translations becoming increasingly vague as he attempted to protect Kenna from the full impact of their contempt. Kenna maintained her composure, but Imani noticed the way her hands had stilled completely in her lap, a sign of someone exerting tremendous self-control. The evening reached its breaking point when Arthur produced a thick contract from his briefcase. "Let's cut to the chase," he declared, his smile predatory. "We can finalize everything tonight. Simple signature, and we'll all walk away happy." He slid the document toward Kenna while addressing the room. "The beauty of international business is that everyone wants the same thing, profit." Monica leaned forward with mock concern. "Of course, if she needs time to have this translated properly, we understand. Though I imagine the basic concepts are universal enough." When the translator reached for the contract, Arthur casually moved it just out of his reach. "Actually, this is pretty straightforward stuff. Standard partnership agreement." Imani, refilling water glasses nearby, found herself close enough to glimpse the document. Her heart sank as she recognized the dense legal language filled with clauses that would essentially transfer controlling interest of Kenna's company to the American partners. The section titled, Management Structure, was particularly damning, establishing Arthur and Monica as primary decision-makers, with Kenna relegated to an advisory role in her own company. The room fell into an unexpected silence as every eye fell on Kenna, waiting for her to sign away her life's work. Imani felt her heart pounding as she watched the orchestrated deception unfold. She thought about Julian's warnings and the importance of keeping her job, but as she looked at Kenna's dignified, trusting face, she made a decision. She set down her water pitcher with deliberate precision, walked to Kenna's side, and performed a deep, respectful bow in the traditional Japanese manner. Then, in fluent Japanese that she had been perfecting for 15 years, she spoke directly to the woman everyone else had dismissed. "Sato-sama, they are hiding the truth about this contract. They believe you cannot understand what they are doing to you." The room erupted in shocked silence. Arthur's face went purple with rage. What the hell did she just say? But Kenna was looking directly at Imani for the first time all evening, her eyes filling with tears of relief and recognition. In soft, grateful Japanese, she replied, "Thank you. Finally, someone sees me as I am." The carefully orchestrated deception had crumbled. Kenna's posture shifted, her shoulders squared, her chin lifted, and her eyes became sharp and focused. In clear, deliberate Japanese, she addressed Imani directly. "Please, tell me exactly what they have been saying about me." Imani took a deep breath, her voice steady. "They called you a wall they were talking to," she began in Japanese. "They said you don't belong at business tables because you can't speak English properly." With each translation, Kenna's expression grew colder, the gentle mask she had worn dissolving to reveal the steel core that had built an empire. "They plan to trick you into signing this contract," Imani continued, gesturing to the documents. "It's not a partnership agreement. It's a takeover." Arthur was vibrating with rage. "Stop this immediately. You're a waitress, you have no idea what you're talking about." "Actually," Imani said, switching back to English, "I understand exactly what I'm talking about." She picked up the contract. Section 4, Management Structure. Primary operational decisions shall be made by the American partners, with the Japanese partner serving in an advisory capacity only. Mr. Ishikawa's face went white as he scanned the section Imani had highlighted, realizing the scope of what he had nearly enabled. Kenna held up a small hand to silence his whispered apology, then addressed the room in English that was heavily accented but perfectly clear. "I understand more than you think," she said, each word measured and precise. "I speak English when people deserve to hear my voice." The revelation hit the room like a physical blow. "You've been understanding everything we said all night?" Monica asked weakly. Kenna's smile was razor-thin. "Every insult, every dismissive comment, every moment you treated me like a child who needed to be tricked into giving away her life's work." She stood gracefully, her small stature somehow commanding the room. "In Japan, we have a concept called nemawashi, the careful cultivation of relationships before formal negotiations begin. It involves respect, patience, and honest communication. You demonstrated none of these qualities, Arthur tried to bluster. Now wait a minute, this is all a misunderstanding. No, Kenna cut him off with quiet authority. You are here to steal my company through legal manipulation and cultural prejudice. She picked up the contract and, with deliberate ceremony, tore it in half. This negotiation is terminated. As Monica made one last desperate attempt to salvage the deal, Kenna looked at her with something approaching pity. The barrier was never language. It was respect. And you cannot negotiate what you do not possess. She walked around the table to where Imani stood. What is your name? She asked in English. Imani Jones, ma'am. Kenna repeated the name carefully. You showed me more dignity in 5 minutes than these people showed me in 5 hours. She reached into her purse, withdrew a lacquered business card holder, and offered a card to Imani with both hands. If you are ever interested in working for a company that values integrity over profit margins, please contact me. Imani accepted the card with equal formality, bowing slightly. A genuine smile touched Kenna's lips for the first time. Your Japanese is excellent. Where did you learn? I lived in Kyoto for 3 years, Imani replied. I was teaching English, but I learned far more than I taught. This is insane. Arthur roared, watching his deal evaporate. You're going to torpedo a major business opportunity because of some waitress with delusions of grandeur. Kenna turned to face him one last time, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had built an empire from nothing. I am going to protect my company from people who mistake courtesy for weakness and silence for ignorance. She gathered her small purse and moved toward the door. Good evening, gentlemen. I will find partners who understand the difference between negotiation and theft. As she reached the doorway, she paused and looked back at Imani. Arigato gozaimasu, she said formally. Your courage saved more than my company tonight. It saved my faith that honorable people still exist in business. With that, she was gone, leaving behind a room of stunned executives and one waitress who had just changed the course of international commerce. The aftermath rippled through the business world with surprising speed. A recording of the evening, captured by an investor, went viral, showcasing the executives' mockery and attempted theft. Arthur's hedge fund faced a mass exodus of investors, while Monica found herself removed from 3 major deals. The hotel, facing a public relations nightmare, promoted Imani to guest relations manager with a mandate to develop cultural sensitivity training for all staff. 3 days after the dinner, Imani received a phone call from Kenna Sato. The offer was extraordinary, Director of Cultural Integration for a new division of her company focused on East-West business relations, based in Tokyo. I don't need time to think about it, Imani said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, absolutely, yes. 2 years later, Imani stood in her Tokyo office overlooking the bustling streets of Shibuya. On her wall hung awards for promoting international business ethics, but the centerpiece of her office was the black lacquered business card holder Kenna had given her. The video of that night had become a case study in business schools on how cultural insensitivity could destroy careers. Her company had since facilitated dozens of successful international partnerships, all built on the principle that respect is the foundation of all profitable relationships. Her assistant knocked. Jones-san, your 3 o'clock appointment is here. The door opened to reveal Kenna. After reviewing business metrics, Kenna paused at the door. Imani, do you ever regret speaking up that night? Imani considered the question, then shook her head. Never. Some silences are worth breaking, especially when they protect people's dignity, Kenna smiled. That is why you were the right person to build this company. You understand that business is ultimately about people, and people deserve respect, regardless of the language they speak. As Kenna left, Imani picked up the business card holder. Inside was a small piece of paper with a quote she had written in both English and Japanese: dignity has no language barrier. So have you ever witnessed someone being treated unfairly because of cultural differences? Share your story below. Also, subscribe to the channel if you believe respect speaks louder than arrogance.